All right, welcome everyone. It is Wednesday. It is 4:30 p.m. Central Time. It means it's office hours here on the ViaMonstra Academy, and it's also Mandalorian Day, but that's for later. Let's get this one rolling. All right. Hey, Andrew, how are things?
Well, you said it's Mandalorian Day, so I'm excited.
Me too. But we have an hour here first. Where you guys can, of course, get an update about what's going on in the MDT ConfigMgr Intune world as usual, and also we have the chance of asking any questions you might have related to these topics would be helpful. But we are fairly flexible in terms of topic. It's as long as it's somewhat related to Microsoft infrastructure, we usually have a hunch on what it's about, but we don't cover every single product.
Try as we might.
Try as we might. Great at Google, like search.
Exactly.
So what's going on this week, Andrew?
So I've got a few things that I can share. I'm sure they're just a small portion of things that actually happened over the last week, but a few that stuck out to me. If you want to share my screen,
that I can do. How about that?
Looks good. Thank you, sir. So first thing I noticed was a cool announcement, a little quality of life update I think we'll be seeing on the Intune and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and Azure AD side of things. Windows servers today, as they show up in those three services, only show up as Windows OS. So, for example, if I look at my devices here in Azure AD or Intune, we'll go over there. You can see my domain controller, for example, is just showing up as Windows OS. This announcement from yesterday let us know that in May, those are going to start showing up as Windows Server to be able to distinguish those things a little bit easier, which is very nice. I'm very happy to see that small improvement. I think this has been there for a while, but we have showcased Adam Fowler's MSPortals.io a few times here on office hours. And a lot of times we're just referring to the Microsoft admin portals here. But I caught a tweet from him yesterday. I didn't really notice that there are actually third-party portals as well that Microsoft doesn't necessarily own or maintain, but they are useful things out there that can be used. So I thought I'd mention that. That was a fairly useful update for me. Our friend Ben Whitmore over at MS Endpoint Manager posted a nice article about how to get started with Certificate Based Auth, connecting to Microsoft Graph. Always looking for another method of connecting securely to that API. So this gained quite a bit of traction over the last couple of days. Patch Tuesday this week, of course, I'm sure a hot topic for everybody listening in today. David Segura, our friend that maintains OSD Builder and some of the submodules, OSD and OSDSUS, he updated those modules to include this week's Patch Tuesday updates. And then lastly, one more article that I found was from Peter Klapwijk. I think it's from the end of last year, it looks like, but it got brought up again this week, so worthy mentioning it again on office hours. Just another method of actually monitoring your Intune policies, profiles, and assignments, just to keep your tenant cleaned up a little bit. Again, these are always these little bits of automation and monitoring tools that we come across, I find to be pretty helpful. So I'd like to mention those on here as well. But those were the few things that I had for today.
All right. One thing that stood out this week was the another round of hardening for domain join operations for imaging, traditional imaging. So I figured I could bring up that blog post, KB as it is. This share screen. Ba-dum. Let's do this and this. That's not the one, and that's not the one either. Well, might as well mention it. I was working with a customer earlier today, and they were on 2111, and I reminded them that it's just a few more months now until it's time to upgrade that one. But that's not why I brought up the Explorer here. But oh, thank you so much. An update to Edge. Yay.
I noticed that as well. I think it's supposed to include all of the Bing preview GPT stuff now.
Yeah, I finally got my account approved, by the way. So I've been using it on my phone. Still heavily throttled. So if you chat for more like 10 or something sentences or questions, my quota is up for the day or for the hour, whatever it was. But anyhow, it was pretty cool. Anyhow, Microsoft started last year to make it a little bit more secure for domain join operations, and they continued now in the March update for this by also offering a policy where you can basically apply that to define additional trusted accounts that have are supposed to be dealing with domain join operations. So if you haven't seen this post, highly recommend to take a look at it. We, of course, we will post the links as usual up on the YouTube channel after the session here. So that was one thing I thought was worth mention. And speaking of updates, this one was a particularly evil one. Turn out that Outlook has a severe vulnerability. So go ahead and patch your Outlook, basically, or update your Outlook. And this article provides some additional information on it. But basically, you could trick Outlook to give out NVLM hashes or force it to do authentication to resources that were not really supposed to be authenticated against. So that's a big one. On the more positive side of things, I mean, it's positive that there's an update available, but it's not positive that there's have to go patch right away. Our friend Petri, he published a new tool. It's basically a parser or a log viewer for the Intune IME agent log file, and also show some delivery optimization information, etc. But I did download it real quick yesterday, I believe, or maybe the day before yesterday. So I saved it out to one of my machines that is enrolled to Intune, which is kind of a requirement, and I have downloaded at least one application, so I actually have a log file. Otherwise, this tool is not going to be any fun. No log file, no parsing. Anyhow, if I run this tool, I get the pick with log file I want to review, and the reason I have fairly large log files in this particular client is that I have increased both the size of them and also the verbosity level of them, which is something you can do in the IME agent. But I'll pick one of those log files, and it goes ahead and give me, all right, how much would you like to see? Maybe the last 24 hours, something like that, see if something happened. And it's reading through the log file, and hopefully I should see some information here shortly. It was faster yesterday. Here we go. Yeah. So here's some log information showing details from when and where. And there is also some information here in the background. When I ran this earlier, I also got some details on when running it without the show log. I got some download information as well for the various stuff that I've been downloading, application and how well they appeared and whatnot. See if I can get that back again.
That sounds pretty helpful.
Mm-hmm. Here we go. So here's some of the applications that I have installed on this device. Apparently some proactive remediation scripts as well. And then here I have some metrics about those, how long it took to download, size of it, etc., and deliver optimization efficiency. This number here is actually really hard to achieve, to get 0. But I have a cache server on this network, and that means that all my clients goes to that one primarily, and that's why I have very little peering going on. So it's hard to achieve that without a cache server, because even if you basically disable DO, it's still going to appear a little bit anyway. So then I had a question coming in earlier this week. Someone posted up on one of the recordings from the previous week, so I figured I should mention that. There were basically 2 questions in one here. First was, how do you manage client health in a medium to large environment? Size of the environment typically doesn't matter. Obviously, it's easier to have a large percentage or high percentage healthy clients if you have like 100 of them versus if you have 100,000 of them. But the process is pretty much the same. And over the years, I have been sharing on my blog some basic guidance for ConfigMgr health. I call it an holistic approach, but basically what it often comes down to, at least in my experience, is that finding data points that make sense to gather and then have them brought up to some sort of central location. That's usually where you start, because the built-in dashboard, etc., doesn't give you too much information about what's going on the clients. And the self-repair options of a ConfigMgr client is only as good as they are. If the client is really broken or cannot communicate, you don't know that it's broken. So I usually prefer to have something else, a service, an application, or most times I just use a scheduled PowerShell script that I run where I use to gather data points. And in this blog post, you find some examples on how you can write a script that gathers some information that could be useful for troubleshooting, and then summarizing that on the server and basically give you a little Excel spreadsheet that you can review. And it's so simple, but you can use this with 55,000 clients. You can very easily navigate through those entries in Excel to figure out, set filters, etc., check for services are running, machines running out of disk space, error codes, event log errors, pretty much anything you can gather. It's very easy to view. Then there are some more elegant, should I say, community solutions. Anders Rödland has a ConfigMgr client health solution. Highly recommend that one. It does the same thing as a scheduled script, but he uploads the data to a database, and there are some nice reports, etc., that you can use. And then, of course, Microsoft does offer a solution as part of their consulting services engagement. I have a few customers running this one. It's really good and it's really expensive. But there's also a similar concept. They of course have an application that runs on the client that you install, but the concept stays the same. You use this to gather information upload it centrally, and then you try to make some clever decisions based on the data that you got from all these clients. The second part to that question was, what about ConfigMgr clients in VDI machines, and especially in the master image that is used for VDI machines? To that, I will only say one thing. Do not include the ConfigMgr client in any image, ever. Period. If you want to use ConfigMgr to manage VDI machines, I'll say it's okay as long as they are persistent, as long as they stay in that state. Non-persistent VDIs, do not use ConfigMgr to manage them. The ConfigMgr client just get utterly confused when you're constantly reverting back to some sort of state that it didn't know it was even remotely in before. So that's my take on it. I know there are other ideas out there, but I'm too old for trying stuff that may or may not work. I like proven solutions. So non-persistent VDIs, no ConfigMgr client. Persistent VDIs, perfectly okay to have a client. Images, do not include the ConfigMgr client. I have spoken. All right. What else?
Everyone heard that here. Yeah, so we've got great updates. Thank you, sir. We have quite a few questions that have come in already, queued up for us. Yes, very happy to see that. Couple of hellos, by the way, and hello to you as well. So first question, I'll get into it from YouTube. Is it true that when you seal the device after Autopilot pre-provision technician phase that you have to connect to the on-premises network within 14 days? Any documentation from Microsoft for reference?
Nothing I've heard. I remember there was a Twitter thread going on about a certificate possibly expiring in 6 months if you had it turned off for a long time, but even that turned out to be not true. It was just a documentation bug, really. But I have not heard of a 14 days limitation.
No, the first thing that comes up on Google is a Reddit post asking if a blog post that said that is correct. And I don't see any official responses here, but most people are saying no time limit.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they use like regular FedEx, UPS type services to send those machines away to users in remote locations, and at times they take time. So I would be very surprised if there is a hard 14-day limit.
Yep, same.
If anyone happened to know that is in the chat, by all means, please let us know. But I have not stumbled across that limit.
All right.
And I usually do.
Yes, you do like testing limits. And I mean that in the most positive way, by the way. Good question. Actually, topical, I think, for tomorrow morning. What is your recommendation for hardware configuration to set up a Hyper-V server to be able to run 30 virtual PCs for a lab? I plan to use it for application package testing via ConfigMgr or Intune.
Was the amount 30 VMs?
Yes.
Yeah, what I found over the years, because part of my work, I work with a 2-Point Software. I have a part-time job with them, and we do a chunk of application testing because 2-Point develops applications. They have to be tested. What we found is to even have remotely real-world tests, you need to assign at least 4 gigs of memory to a Windows client, and sometimes more depending on what you do. And that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea what you need. If you want to have 30 VMs times 4, well, that's 120. So you're going to need at the very least 128 gigs of memory. In terms of CPU, you can have pretty much anything that scales out. This machine here, I got used on eBay, $700 or something like that. It's an HP workstation, but I added in some extra memory, and it also came with a dual CPU configuration. And I can run about 100 VMs on this one before it flinches. But obviously, I cannot run 100 with 4 gigs of memory. So for testing, well, typically around 50 or so in this configuration works very well, no problem. And that will also allow you to have a router or two, some servers running, and whatever you need. So this, I would say, is a good starting point. However, as Andrew so cleverly mentioned, tomorrow morning, we are having a rerun of our community course for building a perfect lab. This one here. So the price is just right, just free to enroll, but we spend an hour and a half on setting up a lab environment. The hardware you need, the network configurations you need, the solutions that are available out there to spin up lab environments quickly. But this is basically free training on how to get a lab going. So if you haven't signed up for this one, I highly recommend to do so. We're going to be about 300-400 people in that one so far, so it's going to be a fairly busy session. But yeah, it'll be fun. I think I've run this 5-6 times by now, but yeah.
Yeah, just this one specifically, right? Not even to mention all of the other times that you've discussed, how to configure this lab in like 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, I mean, having a lab environment to me is like the best tool you can ever have, not just for the regular work that might do, in this case, application testing, but also for learning. This is how I learn, playing around, tinker, test with things. So I do recommend to get a lab environment running, and this one shows you how.
Completely agree. I mean, time and time again, I've seen this set people apart in their careers by spinning up a lab and actually going through and playing around, learning, testing, breaking things. What better place to do that than outside of production or your actual workplace?
Yep.
So great stuff.
Yep.
All right. Dean had a comment about the Windows Server update earlier in the UI, as Brian Dam said of the Windows and Windows Server distinction. Thankfully, we can do simple things.
I love it.
Very good. Question on YouTube. Back in the day, in your gold reference image guides, you used to recommend including the C++ redistros. Is that something that you still recommend? If not in a reference image, then installing in a new build in the TS?
The trend in general these days, and even for myself, tends to go towards having thinner images. So I don't include as much in my images as I used to do. In fact, most of my deployments now, I don't include anything at all. I don't even do a build and capture of them anymore. I use the default image from Microsoft. Sometimes I do a bit of offline servicing of it, but I do not do a build and capture anymore, primarily. So if there are runtimes that needs to be installed as part of your standard deployment, I will do that in the deployment sequence instead, because hardware today, it's so quick to install those runtimes, and Microsoft did a good job, I think, in started to consolidate them also into like one setup that includes multiple versions or multiple versions back. So installing all needed runtimes now in a sequence adds maybe, I don't know, 2-3 minutes to your deployment, and that's not the end of the world, I think. So I hope that answered that question. So time is changing a little bit. There are still organizations that are building thicker images, and they have valid reasons for doing so. But in general, in the industry, we see a more uptake in using just default images to be more flexible. And don't have to spend time grading them, basically.
Good. All right. What is the best way I can update the Autopilot group tag value for bulk service tags? The hash was already uploaded to our tenant by the vendor. Working to get the vendor to do that for us. A follow-up to that, currently I'm having our M365 admin create the app to register for Intune to do an API call. I need some kind of interface like a Power App for a front end.
So, I mean, a provisioning package by nature is just a Vim file, and I've seen organizations actually generating them dynamically for certain things. It's just that scenario is not supported by Microsoft to create them. At the same time, a Vim file is a Vim file. XML files inside a Vim file are XML files in a Vim file. So it works nonetheless, but I would probably have a different method to assigning group tags rather than dynamically modifying provisioning packages. It works. I did one yesterday. We were testing, me and a coworker, we were testing to put in provisioning packages in the specialized paths to provide a unique computer naming. And heck, it works. If you take a provisioning package and basically, see where I put that script. Yeah, here's my name test. I was just smacking in an unattended file, and then I had that unattended file call a script in the specialized paths. Here, it was not that script, but I would use the equivalent to run a provisioning package, which is basically this line here. And that you can do in the specialized paths, and that is before the first reboot, before out-of-box experience. That actually allows you to have any naming convention that you want for your devices. And you can also use this opportunity, this part of your deployment, to reach out to a web service, to take the device and register with Intune or whatever, or assign a group tag. Assign a group tag. Put the machine in the right group, basically, through a direct assignment. So that there are options available for sure, but I don't think dynamically modifying provision packages is a good way to go there. Any comments on that, Andrew, from your experience?
No, I can't say I've got anything to add on that one, unfortunately. All right, I had another question about Autopilot here. Is there a way to get the Autopilot image PC count to Intune Admin Center dashboard? I just need to see the daily progress in a quick look. There is a preview report that shows Autopilot deployments over the last 30 days. If you want to share my screen for a moment, Johan.
I don't think I can figure that one out.
Right.
Apparently I spoke too soon.
Give you a break from talking here for a moment.
Oh, come on. Mouse just decided to leave. Come on. Here we go. Me go away. Yours coming up. There we are.
All right. So there we go. So under devices and then monitor, there is, and then the enrollment category here, there is an Autopilot deployments preview report. And this just showed information 1 second ago. All right. Basically what it showed here, let me just try to refresh again. What it showed here was that I had a user-driven Autopilot deployment. It showed which enrollment status page was used, which user went through the deployment, and the total deployment time, which was 7 minutes or so. But maybe that's why this is still considered preview. because I went from having data to not having any data. So maybe that will be helpful. You could also take, if you want to see the totality of your Autopilot enrolled devices out there, another method that I could think of was looking in Azure AD, and you could do like a dynamic group based on Autopilot enrolled devices that are also enabled. So for example, you see here, this is an Autopilot device, but hasn't gone through the enrollment process yet. Whereas this is another Autopilot device that has. So you can see that it's actually been named, it's enabled, it has a user, a primary user, and everything. So that might be another method of doing it. Do you happen to see anything in this report in your tenant, Johan?
I can take a look. Which node was it in?
Devices and then monitor.
Autopilot preview. No, nada. It's empty.
Okay.
Checking my filters as well. Wonder if it's possible to go further back then. No, I have nothing in it.
Well, I promise it was there because I saw it a moment ago. So that would be one place to look, and then as I said, you might be able to report on some of that out of Azure AD. And if anybody else has any other suggestions, please feel free to throw them in the chat as well. All right. We have another question about client health that I think you may have already answered because you had that client health question come in beforehand. But how would you improve client health in conjunction with client evaluation schedule that runs on each machine? What automatic steps would you put in place for the machine's reported errors by client health?
Well, it would basically to get additional data points, as I demonstrated earlier. Mm-hmm. Put it in collections that gathers info that can be helpful to figure out when clients are not healthy and even provide some basic mitigations for them. The solution I mentioned earlier from Anders Rödland, actually for each check, there is also for many of the controls, not everyone, but there is also a try to fix it option where it tries to mitigate whatever issue that happened to be. So pretty clever.
All right. Some good discussion in the chat surrounding this question that came in. Do you guys think Windows 11 22H2 is stable enough at this point for enterprise deployment? A couple of good comments in here. Every organization is going to have a different point at which they think a major Windows release is ready for enterprise deployment. Ideally, your organization should be using rings so that you can get a sense of whether something is stable in your organization when it's still being released through the insider previews. So those are some good comments from Champagne is Gold on YouTube. Johan, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I just kept thinking back to when we had Richard Hicks joining us a few weeks back when he talked about some of the always-on VPN bugs that were still lingering and haven't been fixed yet. But of course, not everybody. Now it's my turn to not have a functioning mouth. Not all organizations are using those features, and basically that's something you have to validate in your organization whether it's ready or not. The biggest challenge, I think, still is hardware compatibility, where a lot of hardware that is out there is not capable of running Windows 11. So you're going to have to be in a mixed environment for a good while, whether you like it or not. Today, since there is no enablement packages between Windows 11 21H2 and 22H2, I would not deploy 21H2 because it's a bit of a pain to up to the next version anyways. I will definitely test the 22H2 release. I was actually talking to a customer just last week. They are on this journey right now. They are about 100,000 clients, and they have started their Windows 11 journey. They want to go 22H2 right away, just to don't have to go that hop between 21H2 and 22H2. So yeah, I would go for that option and test that one. And it's up to you guys to validate whether it's ready or not, because it's going to be different for different workloads with what you have on them.
Definitely. And again, I appreciate seeing the conversation happening in the chat. That's good stuff. This is, I think, again, that's the point that we're driving home. It seems is it's going to be different for everybody, right? So, good stuff. Follow up from the 14 days earlier. I've had things take longer than 14 days to reach me when it's just coming from the next state. Definitely.
Yep.
Been there.
Yes.
Looks like we might have a comment about an error coming up in Autopilot. Something went wrong. Try again or skip. Are you familiar with that specific error message?
Well, that particular message I've seen like a million times, but it can be many things. It's usually accompanied with an error code that gives you a little bit of an idea of what it is. Most commonly, it's licensing. That the user that is logging in don't have a license. But it could also be something wrong with the service. eHouse has a good post on the topic, and every now and then he will post some statistics and say, oh, this week my numbers on this blog post went up like 400%. There must be an autopilot issue somewhere. And it often is. See if I can find that one. I mean, there are so much information out there on this one, but go to his blog, office, out of office hours. This is a very, very popular post for sure. And he even shared his statistics for different months. So you can kind of tell that, all right, here there was an issue, here were some issues, and here are issues.
Do you have that post up?
Oh, sorry, I thought I was sharing my screen.
There we go.
How about now?
Mm-hmm.
Better?
That's good. Yes.
Yeah, I will share that post in the link collection here. So, but he also has an older one, this one here. Plus, there are a lot of other posts related to this.
Interesting. It's interesting to see those stats.
Yeah.
Very cool. Right. New to ECM, trying to build a report of some sort. How do I run a report to see all installed software and their version in our labs?
Can you repeat that? The audio was cutting out a little bit for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. New to, hey guys, thank you for all you do. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you for doing that. New to ECM, trying to build a report of some sort. How do I run a report to see all installed software and their versions in our labs?
The question is this for ConfigMgr or Intune? That is the bigger question. Because ConfigMgr has plenty of ready-made reports for installed software. Intune has very limited report on installed software. You basically have to extend a little bit to see that in greater detail. Managed applications you can see pretty easily in Intune, but really details. We actually had a Twitter thread going on this morning from a question I got yesterday from someone I couldn't reply to. I didn't know the answer, and that was how do we enable basically software metering in Intune. And it turned out there is actually a view for it in Intune, but you need to have more than 10 devices running that application. Otherwise, due to privacy reasons, it won't do software metering for you. There were also people mentioning the Defender for Endpoint integration that gives you much more details on application usage, and actually will give you a better inventory than you have in Intune. And we showcased many times here in office hours how you can use solutions from, for example, the folks over at MS Endpoint Manager to extend the inventory that Intune has and report additional data. Config Manager is super easy. Intune a little bit more challenging to get good software inventory out of it. Anything else?
Looked like there was maybe a link that somebody tried to put in there, but I'm not seeing it.
No, it seems like the chat platform that we're using for the stream automatically removes links, and I haven't figured out a way to add it or show it. Possibly if you paste it in without HTTPS or something, yes, the actual name to the link. Haven't tried that. Yeah, it is a bit of a shameless plug, obviously, but the people that are behind many of the MS Endpoint Manager blog posts on reporting, they are running a 3-day class on reporting in Intune. And sure, it's not free, but it is a training on how to extend inventory and create reports. So if you're interested in that, by all means, it's coming up in mid-May here. So a lot of good stuff, I think. I will put that link in the chat so you have it. But this team, Maurice, Sandy, and Jan, they know reporting. They know Intune. So
Absolutely. Oh yeah, there's a follow-up. It was the same MS Endpoint Manager link you just referenced. So cool.
there you go.
All right. Just had another question coming in. Microsoft appears to have announced that MDT is no longer supported for Windows 11. Any ideas on replacement? They added a banner explicitly stating Windows 11 is not supported.
Yeah, I mean, it happens to work just fine. It's just that they don't test it anymore because there is no active development, it seems, on MDT. I haven't seen an update in 3 years, and even that update was just a very minor hotfix, and they actually brought back in Michael Niehaus to write that hotfix, and I haven't seen any updates since. If you want to have a traditional embedding solution that is supported by Microsoft, you guys have to use ConfigMgr today. That's the only solution they have that fully supports Windows 11 and all other currently supported Windows Server operating systems, or Windows operating systems, client and servers. that's the only thing they're developing. If you are okay with using community solutions or extensions, by all means, it will work. And Microsoft usually supports stuff like that on a best effort basis, because what Microsoft does support are all the command line tools that comes with the ADK and the way they work, because that's how every single OEM do their imaging. They usually have their own scripts and batch files and whatnot they use to deploy machines in their factories. They don't use ConfigMgr to deploy images. But obviously, ConfigMgr is the better platform for deployment. But you can get pretty far by, for example, embracing a bit of PowerShell. Me and a bunch of other folks over the years has been maintaining this one here, Friends of MDT, which is a PowerShell extension for it. And the software that I work for, I mentioned earlier, 2Pint, we have a big sponsor, or we're still a big sponsor of this project, but there are a lot of other folks also contributing to this solution. And we test this one with Windows 11 and newer versions. And if Microsoft is giving you a hard time, say that a driver injection fails for whatever reason, or whatever issue you are having, well, then you boot up a WinPE and you inject the driver using DISM, and you call the support and say, I'm having trouble injecting drivers using DISM. And that they will support. It's a supported feature, supported command line. So I'm not too worried. It's just a shame, I think, that such a great deployment solution doesn't get any attention anymore. It makes me very, very sad. Yeah, long answer to a short question.
No, that's good. That's good. All right. Thank you, sir. And a follow-up to your comments, love it, creative ways to get Microsoft support to help you. But it's makes sense, right? You're doing the same, you're running the same commands.
Yeah, just have a script, write them. So I have a solution, I have a sequence. But yeah. Right. Fun fact is that we just hired two quite well-known people, Keith Garner and Tim Mintner. They were developing MDT for about a decade with Microsoft. They know a thing or two about deployment, and they have promised to help out with this one. So
awesome.
Future is bright.
I'll say that's great. Big news coming out this week.
Yeah, I mean they have been doing developing deployment solutions all their life, more or less.
That's pretty cool. All right, we had another question come in from YouTube. I'm not sure if you've got some thoughts on this. If I have IBCM set up, then do I still need a CMG? Autopilot hybrid mode works perfectly with IBCM management point, distribution point, and software updates while it's on the internet. Management says, why pay for something that comes free with IBCM?
Yeah, I mean, you can build a house without a hammer. It just takes longer time to drive in the nails. EBMC is not even remotely capable of the things you can do in a cloud management gateway. It's very, very limited in what feature it supports. And it requires inbound ports to your organization. It typically means additional site systems spin up in a separate network. I really do not recommend anyone from using Inter-based client management the old way that ConfigMgr supported before Cloud Management Gateway exists. And sure, there is a cost for the Cloud Management Gateway, but it's I was about to say horseshit, but it's very little. It's we typically see, because I asked a few years back, I reached out to a few organizations that I worked with, and I asked them for their real costs for running CMG. And after debating with the legal departments for a few months, promising not to mention any names, this is what we came down to. And for most of these scenarios, we were down to about 4 or 5 cents per device per month. That is not much money. And you get pretty much every feature that ConfigMgr has for machines that are out on the internet. EBMC only supports like a fraction of it. Forget imaging, forget sequences, forget everything that is fun, forget any real-time actions. It's just not a good solution. There was a reason they developed the cloud management gateway. So highly recommend to ditch that platform and try to convince management to go this route if this is your goal, to manage machines that are on the internet. It's much more secure platform. When you have a scenario like that, let me see, not that one, but when you have clients on the internet, rather than each client talking directly to your site system through an inbound firewall, they talk to the cloud management gateway. Your site server talks to that one, but there is not like a line of sight here like it has for IBMC. So definitely recommend that one.
So more secure, more features, easier to manage.
Yeah, and develop this decade too.
That's a bonus.
IBMC is old.
Yeah. Right. Looks like we did get an answer to your follow-up question about the installed software reports. It was referring to ConfigMgr.
Okay. Yeah, ConfigMgr is dead easy because it comes with so many. Where is my ConfigMgr? I'm actually still sharing my. Yeah.
Yep.
I am. Let's see. Here. So there are almost 500 reports built into ConfigMgr by default. And if you don't like them, you can create your own. Or take a copy and customize. So here I have 500 some reports. And many of these, they are indeed for software, whatever that might be. And it's not too hard to author your own reports as well in this mix. And any report that you find that you happen to like, whatever that report might be, one of the asset intelligence reports, by the way, this one has been deprecated now. I noticed the service point for asset intelligence. So if you upgrade your site server these days, they're going to warn you and say, hey, this one is about to be removed. The inventory is not, but the synchronization service is. But I can take any report here and just do an edit and make a change. Or you can edit them in Visual Studio. There are two good. Did we have them in our slide deck, Andrew? The report books.
Let me take a look.
Forgot. Anyhow, Steve Thompson has written a good one. This one here, even though it's older, reporting hasn't changed. This is a downright great book if you wanted to do ConfigMgr reporting. Then, of course, we have from Garth Jones, one of the MVPs as well here. He has written a few reporting books over the years, like this one here. Highly recommended. Doesn't take you too long to get started with reporting in ConfigMgr. And if you don't like to author report yourself, there are many organizations that sells reports in addition to the built-in 500 some reports. The most common ones are our friends over at System Center Dudes. They have a ton of different products they sell, or reports they sell. You can even subscribe to them these days. Wasn't too terrible. So a lot of reports, even some free ones. All right. Anything else?
Just looking real quick here. I don't think we missed anything.
All right, then. Yeah, and we're almost up on the hour. Dang, that was a good set of questions today.
Absolutely. Very
Like
fun.
it.
Love
Yeah.
it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Andrew, thank you for supporting us here. And I hope to see you all next week.
And don't forget tomorrow morning, if you've got time, join Johan's home lab training.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Johan.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Bye for now.